So, in the last segment, we looked at a proposal from David Lewis to try and deal with the problem that Thompson raises against mind theory. Um, in this segment, we're going to look at soul theory. So, if you remember the very beginning, the very first segment of this slideshow, we introduced the issue, that is, the issue of personal identity, which includes the issue of persistence through time, what makes you the same person you were at the beginning of the semester, if anything. We then introduced a theory, mind theory, according to which you are the same person if you have the same mind, and we raised some general kinds of problems for that theory. What aspect of mind is the important one? What makes an aspect of the mind the same? We then looked at body theory, according to which you are the same person if you have the same body, and we looked at some problems for that and how it replies to those problems. We then looked at Parfit's version of mind theory, according to which two people are the same person if they're psychologically connected in the right kind of way, where what counts as the right kind of way is left up to the speaker, up to the person who's deciding whether two people are identical. And consequently, it becomes a subjective matter. That is, from different points of view, there can be different facts about whether you are the same person as you were at the beginning of the semester. Today we're going to look briefly at soul theory. Soul theory holds that you are the same person if you have the same soul. So let's just briefly introduce the theory. So here you have a person. And here's a question. What makes this person the person that she is? That is, what makes her distinct from other people? And if we talk about persistence, we can say what makes her, at this time that we're seeing her, the same person as she was at an earlier time and will be at a later time. According to soul theory, a person just is her soul, and this implies a criterion for being the same person. X and Y are the same person if and only if X's soul is the same soul as Y's soul. Now, this of course raises a question: what is a soul? There's controversy about what exactly a soul is, but here's a definitional characteristic of a soul. A soul is by definition simple. That means it doesn't have any parts. It can't be divided into, part A and part B. It's just a simple, primitive substance. And the idea is for each person, there's a simple, primitive substance that makes that person be the person who she is. Now notice this simple, primitive substance, in principle, can float free of any particular properties. So if soul theory is true, then all of your bodily properties are accidental features of you. None of them are essential features of you. And all of your mental properties are accidental features of you. None of them are essential features of you. If you have the same soul, if two people, A and B, have the same soul, then they're the same person. It doesn't matter if their minds are completely different. It doesn't matter if their bodies are completely different. All that matters is sameness of soul. Now, in principle, someone can hold that having the same soul or having a particular soul implies having particular mental or physical properties, mental or bodily properties, but one doesn't have to hold that. Okay, so let's look at how soul theory will deal with the kind of objection that Thompson raised to mind theory. Remember, the objection goes like this. At some early time, we have Brown, the person, located in Brown's body, and we then perform some operation that destroys Brown's body but copies Brown's mind and sticks it into each of two other bodies, Purple's body and Red's body. Each of those people, because they have copies of Brown's mind, now claim to be Brown. They want what Brown wanted, they desire, they believe what Brown believed, they remember what Brown remembered, and so on and so forth. The point is, their psychology is qualitatively exactly the same as Brown's psychology was before the destruction of his body. And then what Thompson says is this: according to mind theory, since both the person in Purple's body and the person in Red's body are mentally the same as the person in Brown's body was, it follows that the person in Purple's body and the person in Red's body are both identical with the person who is in Brown's body. So they are both the person Brown. She says this is a problem because that implies by transitivity of identity that the person in Purple's body and the person in Red's body are identical with one another, but of course they're not because they occupy distinct spatial locations, and we're not talking about qualitative identity being exactly similar. We're talking about quantitative identity, being the same particular individual. So that's Thomson's objection, again, to mind theory. Parfit tries to reply to this objection with a sophisticated version of mind theory, according to which both purple and red can be brown, even though they're not identical with one another. And the idea is survival doesn't require identity. We give up on identity all the way around. Right now, what I want you to see is how soul theory would reply to this puzzle. Well, what soul theory would say is this. A person is her soul. When you destroy Brown's body, there's exactly 3 possibilities. One possibility is that you've destroyed Brown's soul. And if you destroy Brown's soul, then Brown survives in neither purple nor red. Another possibility is that you've stuck Brown's soul into purple. And if that's what you've done, then Brown survives in purple. Another possibility is that Brown's soul was stuck in red. If that's what's happened, then Brown survives in red. Now notice it's not possible for Brown's soul to be stuck in both purple and red. Why? Because a soul is a simple thing. It's indivisible. It has no parts. So you can't sort of take part of it and stick it in purple. You can't take part of it and stick it in red. Nor is it duplicable. It's not a kind of thing. It's a particular thing. There's exactly one of it. So you can't stick it in multiple places. So soul theory offers a kind of simple solution to this kind of problem. It also offers a simple solution to the problem of change, right? So if I can recall Phineas Gage, who, when the spike was driven through his head, according to the standard story, went through a radical personality change. And then there's a question, was he the same person, and what makes him the same person? Well, intuitively, you might want to say he is the same person, even though his psychology is all different. So how could that be? Well, you might say it's because he has the same body. But of course, his body has gone through changes too. Part of his brain is now missing, for example. A part of his face has been destroyed. So what makes him the same person? Well, according to soul theory, there's a simple, indivisible soul, and that soul is the same soul, therefore he's the same person. Now, given these virtues of soul theory, you might wonder why we're spending so little time on it. You might expect it to be popular. I'll say it's not especially popular. That is, among professional philosophers and psychologists, it's not especially popular. And the question is why? And the answer to that question is pretty straightforward. It's because epistemically speaking, it's not so useful. So consider this question. We have this person here. We saw this person on an earlier slide. Is this the same person who was on the earlier slide? Well, suppose people are their souls. How can you decide whether this is the same person? What evidence would be relevant to whether this is the same person? It looks like there's nothing we can say. There is no answer. Or the answer is, well, the person is bodily similar, has the same body, and therefore has the same soul, and therefore is the same person. Well, if the way you decide that a person has persisted is by saying they have the same body, then why introduce the soul theory at all? That is, if you're if the only evidence you can have that a person has persisted through time is that they're bodily similar, then what's the point of the soul theory? What work is it doing? Now, instead of pointing to the body similarity, you might say, well, look, in order to decide that this is the same person, we would need to kind of investigate the person. We need to ask them certain questions to see if they're mentally similar, see if they have the same beliefs, desires, hopes and fears, memories, personalities, and personality traits, and so on that the person on the previous slide had. And if this person does have all that, then it's the same person. If this person doesn't have enough of that, then it's not the same person. Well, that's a fine answer too, but notice it also makes soul theory seem superfluous. Because we say, is this the same person? Put it this way. I say, is this the same person? You say, well, if it has the same soul, it is. And I say, well, how can we tell if this person has the same soul? And you say, we have to look at the mental characteristics. And then I say, well, then why bother with soul theory? Why not just say it's the mental characteristics, the mental similarity that makes this the same person? Now, I'm not saying this is a damning objection to soul theory. Sometimes even if you recognize something by a certain feature, you don't want to identify the thing with that feature. That's perfectly sensible. I'm just explaining why it is that soul theory is not especially popular among people who reflect on these issues. And the answer is because it doesn't look like there's a lot of work for it to do. Okay, and we're going to stop there. And that's the end of the unit on personal identity.